Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Radiant Rise. I'm Michelle, and as I'm recording this, it is Sunday morning. Surgery is now 2 days away. This episode was to be recorded days ago. Originally, I planned to record it on Thursday. That didn't happen. Then I planned to record it first thing Friday morning. That didn't happen either. Then I thought I would record during my lunch break at work. That didn't happen. Then I told myself I could come home Friday night, get comfortable, and finally sit down to record it. That didn't happen either. Then I thought Saturday morning would finally be the moment, but even then, my body was asking for sleep. At this point, almost nothing had gone according to the plan I originally made, and honestly, that perfectly describes how my body and my life have felt lately. Nothing has felt predictable. Nothing has followed a neat schedule. Every time I think I know what the next few hours will look like, something changes. My body changes the plan. An appointment takes longer than expected. My anxiety becomes too overwhelming. Exhaustion completely takes over. Or life gives me something different from what I thought I needed. And maybe that is the part of what this episode has become. Not a perfectly organized update, not a story recorded after everything was settled, but an honest record of what it feels like to prepare for surgery while plans keep changing and your body keeps reminding you that it has limits. Thursday morning, I went for my first iron infusion. My doctors wanted me to receive two iron infusions before surgery because of how depleted my iron levels had become over months of bleeding and several hospitalizations. This was not actually my first iron infusion this year. Back in March, during one of my hospital admissions, I received iron then too. And even after that, my iron became low enough that I needed another series before surgery. That fact alone made me realize just how much my body has been through. The ongoing bleeding, the hospital admissions, the drop in my hemoglobin, the weakness, the dizziness, the brain fog, and the kind of exhaustion that sleep does not seem to fix. My body has been trying to function while repeatedly losing what it needs. At first, Thursday's infusion seemed to be going normally. Then, towards the end, my blood pressure dropped to 84 over 60. The nurses told me they could not safely allow me to leave with my blood pressure that low. So after the infusion was completed, they gave me an entire bag of IV fluids and continued monitoring. By the time the fluids were done, my blood pressure had improved to 98 over 66. That was finally high enough for them to allow me to leave. Looking back, I probably should have gone straight home. My body definitely needed rest, but I didn't. I went to work, not because I felt fine, not because the fluids had suddenly restored all of my energy. I went because I could not afford to miss another day. I have already missed so much work because of hospitalizations, appointments, procedures, pain, bleeding, and everything else that has been happening medically. With surgery only days away and an unknown recovery timeline ahead of me, I was trying to make sure my final paycheck before surgery was as complete as possible. My body needed rest, but financially, I felt like I had to keep going. So I did. That is one of the parts of illness people do not always see. Going to work does not always mean someone feels well. Sometimes it means they cannot afford not to go. A person can be working and still in pain, working and still feel dizzy, working and still be physically depleted, working while using every ounce of energy simply to make it through the day. Showing up does not always mean the illness is mild. Sometimes it shows how much pressure the person is carrying. After work, I came home knowing there was still one important thing left to do. Luna needed her haircut. Thankfully, Carla came over to help, and my mother-in-law Lisa was there too. That was really the only important thing we had to do, get Luna groomed before surgery. I wanted to make sure she was comfortable, clean, and easier to care for while I recovered. During her haircut, I started to feel lightheaded. I could feel my body struggling, but I kept going because I knew how important it was to finish. Looking back, I realized I was not only taking care of Luna, I was also trying to take care of my future self. Knowing she would be groomed and comfortable gave me one less thing to worry about after surgery. And I want to say thank you to Lisa and Carla. If either of you is listening to this episode, thank you. Your help meant more than I can explain. It was not only about getting Luna's haircut finished, it was about knowing I did not have to carry every responsibility alone. By the time we were done, I had completely, absolutely nothing left. I ate dinner and almost immediately fell asleep. There was no recording, no editing, no podcast. My body was done. When I woke up Friday morning, I honestly believed I was finally going to finish this episode. I made my coffee, sat on the couch, Luna curled beside me like she always does. I opened everything I had been working on and started editing. Then I fell asleep again. I woke up frustrated because I could not believe it had happened. So I told myself I would record during lunch. But then lunchtime came and my anxiety was through the roof. My mind felt scattered. I could not organize my thoughts. I did not have the emotional capacity to sit in my office trying to record something this personal while watching the time and worrying about being interrupted. So I decided I would wait until I got home. Surely I could do it then. But when I walked through my front door after work, I was so exhausted that I fell asleep almost immediately. Eventually, I woke up long enough to eat dinner, then went right back to sleep. Again, no editing, no recording, no publishing, just sleep. By Saturday morning, it was almost 9:30, and I was preparing to leave for my second iron infusion. I still had a headache that had started the night before. I had taken Tylenol around 4 o'clock in the morning, but I woke up and the headache was still there. It was not severe, but it was there, and my body felt incredibly heavy. Sitting up felt like effort, thinking felt like effort, getting ready felt like effort. In me was asking for sleep. That was emotionally difficult because I could see everything that I still needed to have done before surgery: cleaning, laundry, packing the hospital bag, stocking the recovery cart, preparing Luna, finishing work responsibilities, buying the last few recovery supplies, organizing the house. And every time I thought, okay, I'll start now, my body answered with one word: sleep. There were moments when I felt useless, like I was falling behind, like I should somehow be able to force myself through it. And I remember thinking, I just want this feeling to end. Not because I wanted to stop living, not because I wanted to hurt myself. I wanted the exhaustion to end. I wanted the headache to end. I wanted to wake up and feel like myself again. I wanted my body to stop feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. That is the part I do not think people always see. My mind was racing with everything that needed to happen before Tuesday, but my body was moving at a completely different speed. My mind said, there is so much to do. My body said, you need sleep. And for once, I listened. Before the infusion, I took a nap. I had some time before we needed to leave, and I felt too out of it to keep pushing. The nap was not laziness. It was not procrastination. It was my body taking what it needed. Saturday afternoon, I went for my second iron infusion. After what happened during the first one, I was nervous. I made sure the iron infusion team knew everything, that my blood pressure had dropped to 84 over 60, that I had needed a full bag of IV fluids, that I had continually felt lightheaded and deeply exhausted afterward, that I had a lingering headache. This time, I received the iron infusion and IV fluids. Thankfully, everything went well. That gave me a sense of relief I had not felt in days. Not because I suddenly felt completely better. I didn't. But I walked out knowing I had completed both infusion sessions before surgery. That mattered to me. My doctors had already cleared me for surgery, but all of us wanted me to receive the iron beforehand, if possible. One less thing hanging over me. One more way I had tried to support my body before Tuesday. After the infusion, I still had another necessary stop to make. I needed to get my nose piercing changed from the silver jewelry to a plastic spacer so it would be safe for surgery. It was one more small but important task. One more item on the list. One more thing I had to have handled before Tuesday. I was also able to get 3 pajama dresses to use during recovery. That may sound like a small thing, but it gave me more relief than I expected. After abdominal surgery, I know I will want something loose, soft, and comfortable that does not press against my stomach or incisions. Finding those 3 pajama dresses meant I had one less thing to worry about. For the first time in days, I was finally able to cross several things off my list instead of only adding more to it. I completed the second infusion. I received the fluids. I changed the piercing. I found recovery clothes. Those things mattered. Originally, I thought I would come home Saturday evening, revise the episode, and spend the rest of the night quietly resting. But once again, the plan changed. Our friends Rad and Grace invited us over for dinner and a movie at their house. At first, part of me wondered whether I should go. I was tired. My body had already been through the infusion, the fluids, piercing change, shopping for recovery clothes. There was still so much waiting for me at home. Laundry, cleaning, the recovery cart, the hospital bag, all of those thoughts about surgery that had been running nonstop through my head. Part of me felt as though going anywhere other than home meant I was avoiding what needed to be done. But Eric and I decided to go. And honestly, I think it was one of the best decisions we could have made. For a short while, I was able to step away from the appointments, the list, the financial stress, and the fear of Tuesday. I was able to sit with friends, eat dinner, watch a movie, talk, relax, and let my mind rest somewhere other than inside of every possible worst case scenario. It did not make surgery disappear. It did not remove the exhaustion. It did not complete the preparation still waiting for me at home, but it helped me get out of my own head. It gave me space to breathe, and sometimes that kind of rest matters just as much as sleep. Sometimes rest is laying down. Sometimes rest is turning off the endless mental checklist. Sometimes rest is spending a few hours with people who make you feel safe enough to stop carrying everything alone. Rad and Grace, if you're listening to this episode, thank you. Thank you for inviting us over. Thank you for dinner, the movie, the company, and the chance to feel a little more normal for a while. You may not have realized how much I needed that evening, but it truly meant a lot to me. By the time we came home, I had not recorded the episode. I had not completed my revision. The laundry was still waiting. The house was still waiting. Sunday's preparation was still ahead of me. But mentally, I felt a little lighter. And after the level of anxiety and overwhelm I had been carrying, that mattered more than just forcing myself through another task. Saturday night reminded me that rest does not always have to mean staying home and sleeping. Sometimes rest means letting yourself enjoy a peaceful moment. Sometimes it means allowing yourself to laugh. Sometimes it means spending time with people you care about and remembering that you are more than a patient preparing for surgery. For a few hours, I was not thinking about the operation. I was not making another list. I was not caring to solve every possible problem. I was simply Michelle, spending an evening with Eric and our friends, and I needed that. When we came home, I briefly considered sitting down and finally recording, but I decided not to. I realized I did not need to keep forcing myself simply because the plan had already changed several times. My hot, my body had been asking for rest for days. My mind had been overwhelmed. And after the infusion, the fluids, the piercing appointment, shopping, dinner, and a movie, I needed to stop. So instead of recording, I gave myself permission to wait until Sunday morning. For once, I did not treat changing the plan like a failure. This episode had already waited several days. It could wait one more night. My body and mind could not keep waiting for me to give them permission to rest. That realization felt important. Sometimes taking the next step means moving forward. Sometimes it means accepting an invitation that helps you breathe. Sometimes the next step is stopping. So now it is Sunday morning. I am finally recording this episode from home, not because everything is finished, not because I suddenly feel completely rested, not because the anxiety has disappeared, but because I allowed myself to pause. And because this episode matters to me, I wanted to share this part of the journey before surgery, not after I already know how everything turns out. I want to document what it feels like to be here right now, still waiting, still preparing, still afraid, still hopeful, still overwhelmed, still exhausted, but also grateful for the moments and people who have helped me breathe in the middle of it. I am trying to understand the difference between pushing through and forcing myself beyond what I can handle. I am also learning that caring for myself does not always look exactly the way I expected. Sometimes it is sleep, sometimes it is IV fluids, sometimes it is asking for help, sometimes it is loose pajama dresses, sometimes it is dinner and a movie with friends. Surgery is now only 2 days away. 2 days away from finally learning what happened inside of my body and what the surgeons may or may not have found. 2 days away from a procedure that could take anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, depending on what they discover once they begin. 2 days away from answers I have spent months searching for. I still do not know whether they will find bowel involvement. I do not know whether my right ovary will need to be removed. I do not know whether my appendix will need to be removed. I do not know how extensive this surgery may become. I do not know how long I will be unable to work afterward, and I do not know exactly what recovery will look for. If I am honest, That scares me. But fear is not the only thing I am carrying. I am carrying hope too. Hope that this surgery will finally provide answers. Hope that the surgeons will find something they can safely treat. Hope that the iron infusion gave my body additional support. Hope that all this preparation will lead me toward a life with less pain. I hope there will eventually be quiet mornings where I can sit with my coffee and Luna beside me without thinking about hospitals, blood tests, appointments, surgery, medications, missed work, and everything that still needs to be done. Maybe one day they will simply be quiet mornings. Coffee in my hands, Luna curled beside me, the sunrise outside, and a life that feels a little lighter than it does right now. It is difficult to explain what it feels like to reach this point after spending so long searching for answers. For months, my life has revolved around pain, bleeding, appointments, testing, medications, emergency room visits, hospital admissions, and trying to understand what has been happening inside my body. There have been so many moments when I knew something was wrong, not because I had every medical answer, not because every test clearly showed the cause, but because I live inside this body every day. I know what my normal feels like, and this was not normal. The pain was not normal. The bleeding was not normal. The exhaustion was not normal. The way my daily life began shrinking around my symptoms was not normal. But knowing something is wrong and being able to prove exactly what is wrong are two very different things. That gap between what you feel and what medicine can immediately explain can become an incredibly lonely place. You start wondering whether the next doctor will understand, whether the next test will finally show something, whether the next hospital visit will lead to an answer or just another discharge home with the same symptoms and more questions. You learn how to describe the pain in numbers, how to repeat your medical history quickly, how to list medications and allergies from memory, how to explain the same symptoms over and over again to people meeting you for the first time. And every time you walk into another appointment, part of you hopes this will finally be the one that changes everything. The past several weeks have been especially difficult. I spent almost 2 weeks going in and out of the hospital because of the severe abdominal and pelvic pain, bleeding, diarrhea, weakness, and moments when I felt close to passing out. There were tests, scans, blood work, IV medications, hours spent waiting, nights spent trying to sleep in a hospital bed while machines beeping around me, moments when the pain became so intense that I could barely focus on anything else. Moments when I was scared, not only because of how badly I felt, but because I still did not know or understand why it kept happening. Hospitals are supposed to be places where people go for help, and I did receive help: fluids, pain medication, testing, monitoring, care when my body felt like it was reaching its limit. But there is also something exhausting about repeatedly going to the hospital without reaching a complete answer. You leave grateful that the immediate crisis was addressed, but still afraid because the larger problem remains. You you return home hoping the symptoms will stay controlled. Then the pain returns, the bleeding returns, the weakness returns, and you are forced to decide whether it is bad enough to go back again. That cycle takes a toll physically, but also takes a toll emotionally. There is fear every time the symptoms intensify, frustration every time life is interrupted again, guilt about missing work, changing plans, and needing help. exhaustion from constantly having to decide whether your body is experiencing another emergency. Eventually, you stop feeling like you're living your life. You began living and feeling like you are managing one medical crisis after another. Pain has a way of becoming the loudest symptom, but pain has not been the only thing my body has been dealing with. There has also been anemia, blood loss, weakness, brain fog, dizziness, fatigue that sleep does not seem to fix. There have been mornings when I woke up feeling depleted, days when basic tasks felt heavier than they should, moments when I questioned why I could not simply make myself do more. Sometimes I blamed myself. I wondered whether I was being lazy, whether I was allowing the situation to overwhelm me, whether I needed to push harder. But my body was not lacking motivation. It was lacking what it needed to function properly. That became even clearer this week. My blood pressure dropping during the first infusion. I needed IV fluids. I went to work anyway. I became lightheaded while helping with Luna. I fell asleep after dinner. I fell asleep while trying to edit. I came I came home from work Friday and fell asleep again. I woke up only long enough to eat and then went back to sleep. My body was not being difficult. It was asking for help. And over again, sleep became the only thing it seemed to ask for. One of the biggest differences between this surgery and so many earlier points in my medical journey is that I finally feel heard. For a long time, I felt like I was constantly trying to prove the seriousness of what I was experiencing, trying to explain that the pain was not just a bad day, that the bleeding was not something I could simply ignore, that my symptoms were affecting my work, relationship, energy, emotional health, and ability to live normally. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from being sick while also feeling you are responsible for convincing people that you are sick. You start preparing for appointments like you are building a case. You organize records, write timelines, save test results, track symptoms, list hospital visits. Try to remember every detail because you are afraid something important will be dismissed if you do not explain it perfectly. But with my current surgical team, something feels different. I do not feel like I have to convince them that endometriosis can be serious. I do not have to explain that it can affect more than menstruation. I do not have to defend the fact that I can still have endometriosis related pain even though I have already had a hysterectomy. They understand that endometriosis can involve organs, it can create adhesions, it can affect the bowel, that it can continue causing pain after previous surgeries, that it can interfere with nearly every part of a person's life. For the first time in a long time, I feel like the people treating me understand that something significant may be happening inside my body, even if we do not know yet the full extent. That does not remove the fear, but it changes the fear. There's a difference between walking into surgery terrified that no one believes you and walking into surgery knowing that the people caring for you are actively looking for answers. I have had surgeries before. I have been through anesthesia. I have recovered from procedures, but this surgery feels different. Part of that is because so much is still unknown. The surgery is expected to be robotic and could take anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, but that estimate depends on what they find. My surgeon suspects there may be bowel involvement. There is also the possibility of my right ovary being removed. My appendix may need to be removed. Maybe neither will need to be removed. Maybe one will, maybe both will. Those decisions have not been made in advance. They will depend on what my surgeons see once the operation begins. That means I could go to sleep understanding one version of the plan and waking up to learn that the surgery became more extensive than expected. That is difficult to process. I understand why the uncertainty exists. I understand that my surgical team needs the ability to respond safely to what they find, but emotionally, it is still frightening. There are so many questions I keep circling back to. What will they find? How extensive is the endometriosis? Is it affecting my bowel? Are there adhesions? Is there damage that imaging did not clearly show? Will they be able to remove what is causing the pain? Will my right ovary still be there when I wake up? Will my appendix? Will the surgery finally explain the severity of what I have been experiencing? Will recovery be straightforward, or will the procedure become more complicated than anyone expects? Will the surgery finally give me relief, or will I wake up with another set of questions? I can ask what the possibilities are. I can prepare for different outcomes. I can organize my medical binder. I can make lists, but no one can give me the answers I want most until the surgery happens. Those answers are waiting in the operating room. Right now, I feel like I am living in the space between fear and hope. The fear is real. I am afraid of complications, afraid of what they may find, afraid of waking up and learning that more had to be done than expected, afraid of pain, afraid of recovery, afraid of how long I may be unable to work, afraid of what this will mean financially, afraid that even after surgery, some of the pain may remain. But there is hope here too. I hope they finally find a clear explanation. I hope they find something that they can safely treat. I hope removing endometriosis or adhesions creates relief. I hope my body is able to recover. I hope the iron infusions give my body extra support. I hope this surgery marks the beginning of a different chapter. I do not expect surgery to make my entire life perfect. I know I have other chronic conditions. I know healing may take time. I know one procedure may not erase everything my body has been through, but hope creates space. Space for less pain, space for more energy, space to work without constantly forcing myself through symptoms, space to enjoy time with my family, space to create, space to live without every decision being shaped by what my body may do next. Fear and hope can exist at the same time. I am learning that one does not cancel out the other. The last few days have taught me something I am still trying to accept. My worth is not measured by whether I complete everything on the schedule I originally created. A delayed podcast episode is not a failure. Needing fluids is not a weakness. Sleeping because my body has nothing left is not laziness. Changing the plan is not giving up. Choosing not to record Saturday night was not procrastination. Going to dinner with friends instead of staying home with the to-do list was not irresponsible. It was care. Sometimes caring for yourself means allowing the schedule to change again and again. Sometimes it means admitting that your brain cannot handle one more demand. Sometimes it means choosing the place where you feel the safest. Sometimes it means accepting an invitation that helps you to stop spiraling. Sometimes it means waiting until you can tell the story without forcing every word. And sometimes the next step is simply stopping. There is no perfect answer inside this conflict. There is only a person doing the best she can with the body, mine, and circumstances she has. Thursday, that person was me. Friday, that person was me. Saturday, that person was me. And today, that person is still me. Not because I suddenly found some hidden energy reserve, but because I am trying to listen more closely to what my body and mind need. The two iron infusions are now complete. My piercing has been changed for surgery. I have three comfortable pajama dresses ready for recovery. I was able to spend a peaceful evening with Eric, Rad, and Grace and give my mind a break from everything medical. Several important things are finally crossed off my list, but there's still so much left to prepare. Today is my main preparation day: cleaning, laundry, organizing the house, stocking the recovery cart, finishing the hospital bag, making sure Luna has what she needs, prioritizing what matters most, and trying not to panic about everything I cannot afford, finish, or control. The practical work of preparing for surgery is still ahead of me, and so is the emotional work, because preparing for surgery is not only about getting the house ready, it is about preparing for the possibility that I may not be able to manage my life normally for a while. My home, my work, my finances, my medications, my body, my relationships, and my ability to accept help. That is where I want to continue in part two.